Today we're going to talk about dividing decimals by whole numbers. So it's important that we look at that what we are dividing by is a whole number. Later we're going to talk about dividing by decimals. So dividing decimals by whole numbers is very similar just to dividing regular numbers. So we divide just normal. The only thing you have to remember is this step 2 right here. This step is really important. What we have to do in step 2 is we have to put a decimal in your quotient. And if you don't remember what quotient is, that is your answer, directly above the decimal in your dividend. So this is where, I know not everyone likes to use the grid, but this is where it's really important to make sure that you're keeping it lined up because the decimal placement is really, really important. So let's go ahead and look at an example here. We're going to do 8 and 54 hundredths divided by 4. So when we say we're dividing decimals by whole number, our divisor, the number that we're dividing by, is a whole number. And we're going to use the same steps that we did for just regular long division. Does McDonald's sell burgers? So divide, then multiply, then subtract, then bring down. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to rewrite the problem in my grid. So again, it's very important to make sure that you're keeping things lined up. So 8 and 54 hundredths divided by 4. And then just like before, I'm going to write out my first 9 multiples. You might know your multiples of 4, but just in case, it's nice to have them written out on the side. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36. Let's just check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Perfect. Then we're going to go ahead and divide. And if you want to right away, you can think about that step 2. It said that the decimal in our quotient and our answer should be directly above the decimal in your dividend. So if I put my decimal here in the dividend, directly above it in my answer above, there should be a decimal point. Lined up perfectly. Let's go ahead and divide. 8 divided by 4. 4 goes into 8 2 times. Then we multiply. 4 times 2 is 8. Next step is to subtract. 8 minus 8 is 0. Last step is to bring down. Now we divide. 5 divided by 4. 4 goes into 5 once. Next step is to multiply. 4 times 1 is 4. Next step is to subtract. 5 minus 4 is 1. And the last step is to bring down. Back to step 1, divide. 4 goes into 14, 1, 2, 3 times. Next we multiply. 4 times 3 is 12. Then we subtract. 14 minus 12 is 2. Last step is to bring down. When we did normal long division, we added a decimal point and we added a 0. But we already have a decimal point. So that's confusing. We don't want 2 decimal points. So we actually don't need to add a decimal point, but we are going to add a 0 like we did before. Because adding a 0 on the end after a decimal, that's not going to change the value. So we bring down our 0. Now we go back to step 1, divide. 20 divided by 4. 4 goes into 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Multiply. 4 times 5 is 20. Next step is to subtract. 20 minus 20 is 0. So now we have our remainder of 0. Our answer is 2 and 135 thousandths. So you should always look back and think about if your answer makes sense. Sometimes it's a little bit harder in these instances, but if I look at this as a whole number, that's really close to the whole number 8. And 8 divided by 4 would give me something around 2. So it does make sense. Let's do another example. For this one, we're going to do 92 and 34 hundredths divided by 12. So again, we're looking at the number that we are dividing by. We are dividing by a whole number, so we don't have to worry about anything. We're going to divide just like normal. So let's set it up. 92, I'm going to put my decimal. It's very important to have that lined up there. And 34 hundredths divided by 12. Just like before, I like to write out my multiples of 12. Use your multiplication chart if you need to. 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84, 96, 108. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Perfect. Let's go ahead and divide. Again, step 2 is the most important part. The decimal in our answer up here has to be in the same spot directly above it in the dividend. So if our decimal is here in our dividend, our decimal has to go directly above it in our answer. And let's go ahead and divide. 9 divided by 12, that's too small, it doesn't go in, I'm going to put an X there. So move on to the 2 digits. 92 divided by 12. It goes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Then we multiply. 12 times 7 is 84. Then we subtract. 92 minus 84, which is 8. Next up is to bring down. Bring down the 3. How many times does 12 go into 83? It goes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Next up is to multiply. 12 times 6 is 72. Next up is to subtract. 83 minus 72. 3 minus 2 is 1. 8 minus 7 is 11. And the last step, don't forget, is to bring down before you start dividing. 114 divided by 12. 12 goes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Multiply. 12 times 9 is 108. Next step is to subtract. 114 minus 108. If you need to borrow, this becomes 0. This becomes 14. 14 minus 8 is 6. We have nothing to bring down. Okay, so just like before, we said normally with long division, we would put a decimal here, we'd add a 0. But we already have a decimal point, so we don't need to add a decimal, but we do need to add a 0. A 0 at the end does not change the value. So bring down your 0, and back to step 1, divide. 60 divided by 12. 12 goes into 60. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Multiply. 12 times 5 is 60. Next step is to subtract. 60 minus 60 is 0. We got a remainder of 0, which tells us that our answer is 7 and 695 thousandths. So again, making sense of it, this is about 92 divided by 12. It makes more sense if you're dividing 92 12 times to get an answer around 7 than to get 76 or 769 or 7,000. So that decimal placement's really important. All right, I'm going to give you an example to try on your own. I'm going to do 66 and 43 hundredths divided by 14. Go ahead and try that one and get that answer checked off.